Welcome to Unshrinkable Midlife Moves, the podcast that celebrates midlife women who refuse to shrink, who say yes to new adventures, and who are discovering just how powerful movement can be. Today's episode is a little different because it's the story behind this show. The story of a woman who once hid from cameras, avoided being seen, and never imagined stepping back into competing in her 40s. A woman who walked into her first Hyrox class unable to push a sled and 3 months later stood on the start line of her first race. Stronger, faster, braver, and more alive than she'd ever been in years. You'll hear how a lunchtime article changed everything, how one yes after another opened a world of possibility, and how choosing movement became a return to her boldest, truest self. From becoming unexpectedly visible to inspiring other midlife women to step into their power. This is a story of reclaiming identity, embracing discomfort, and discovering that midlife isn't the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of a new chapter. Get ready, because what you'll hear today might just open something up in you too. This is my story. So today I'm telling my story, the reason why we're here, why this podcast exists. I used to hide. I didn't like taking pictures. I didn't move that much at one point. And I certainly couldn't imagine what my life would look like now in my midlife. Better, bigger, greater than I could even imagine in my 20s and 30s. And I've gone from somebody who never saw myself as an athlete during my midlife. I was an athlete when I was younger. After I stopped competing in my late teens, early 20s, I didn't imagine that I would ever compete again. I consign that to history. I never liked being seen. I was that person who never took pictures. I would always rather take a picture for somebody else than be a picture. And I definitely never imagined a lot of what has happened to me in the last year and a half since I started moving and since I found Hyrox. If you don't know about Hyrox, let me give you a quick overview. It's a fitness endurance race. It consists of 8 1-kilometer runs followed by 8 different stations. So you run a kilometer and then you do a station. The stations include the ski machine, which simulates cross-country skiing, pushing a sled that's weighted, pulling a sled, doing burpees, rowing 1K, carrying 16-kilogram kettlebells for 100 meters, doing lunges with a 10-kilogram weight on your back, and then doing 100 wall balls with a weighted medicine ball. It's the ultimate test of fitness combined with running. It is just the most amazing and admittedly painful race and activity you can do for me, but it gives you so much satisfaction, so much reward, so much progress. I have been on an adventure since I started training for Hyrox, and I have become somebody I never imagined I could be. I am stronger, fitter, faster, more adventurous, braver, bolder than I have ever been in my life. And I put it all down to moving differently, and in my case, because of Hyrox. This is my story about how I got here. It was just another day. I was at my desk working. I work from home, and I was on my lunch break reading a BBC article about the new fitness craze, which was called Hyrox. As I read this article about this new craze and new race, I became quite intrigued. But what particularly piqued my curiosity was pushing a sled. This was something I'd done on holiday about 1.5 years, 2 years before, and absolutely loved it. When I did it for the first time, I did think, oh my gosh, I wish there were a way I could incorporate this into training of some sort. So when I read this article about Hyrox and the sled element, I was sold. I was like, right, I'm going to have a go. I want to try this. So I found the closest Hyrox classes near to me, and it turned out to be an F45 gym not far from my home. I signed myself up. I hadn't been moving much at that time. I'd been doing Les Mills and body pump and body combat classes for probably 15 years. I'd been training at home since 2018, so a good 6 years. I'd stopped training over the last 6 months because I'd lost the love of it. It was becoming an obligation. I was doing it because, you need to keep fit and I need to be moving, but I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. I used to love those classes. They used to really push me, but working out at home just didn't do the same thing. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop moving. And I guess many people can understand and relate to When you say you stop for a little while becomes longer. And then before I knew it, it was 6 months and I hadn't done anything. I was looking for something to do to get myself moving. I was thinking about climbing, maybe doing a triathlon, all these things, but nothing was really exciting me. So I just was doing nothing and I just left it. But as I read that article, something came alive and was like, oh, this could be it. In a way, it felt like there was a little tap on my shoulder and I couldn't ignore it. So I booked myself onto that class on the Sunday, having read the article on the Wednesday. And it was then everything changed and my life opened up effectively. Let me tell you about the first class. The first class was honestly quite horrific. It was beyond anything I could imagine. It was hard. It was tough. Couldn't breathe. The running combined with the workouts was unlike anything I'd ever done before. It was full on. But I have to say, through all the pain, I will admit, through all the pain, I was coming alive. There was a challenge, something I couldn't do. And I was surrounded by amazing people who were doing that thing. I remember doing the sled push. The first time I couldn't move the sled, not an inch. It just wouldn't budge, trying to put all my body weight behind it. The trainers had to take off all the weights. And even then I could just about move it, but it was hard work. Same thing with the pull. And I left that class that day deciding I was going to push that sled and get better. Although I hadn't been able to run for 10 years up until the year before. I was just getting back into being able to run, which was one of the most exciting things for me after not being able to do so for 10 years. So the running combined with the stations was like a gift from heaven, maybe a bit extreme, a bit cliche, but that's what it felt like for me. I left there feeling alive, and that's the only way I can describe it. I was in a rut at that time, not exercising. Things were quite flat, felt quite one-dimensional in many ways in my life. Doing that session, I felt like I came alive for the first time in a while. There was something about the challenge, the intensity had lit up. That's when I decided I was going to return. I went back every week, and every week there was progress, and that for me is the beauty of Hyrox. I was doing a little bit more every week. I could go a bit further with the runs or a little bit faster. I could push the sled a little bit further and I was feeling better. Don't get me wrong, life wasn't bad, but having that class every week really focused me on progressing, doing the thing that I loved. I've always loved to move over the years, and that came back. I was more myself. Every week I grew a little bit stronger, a little bit faster in my runs, and came back more to myself. It wasn't just about exercise, it really was. And again, sounds cliche, but it felt like a reawakening, like a new opportunity. Since then, some amazing things have happened. Through exercise, I saw myself becoming a different person in an unexpected way. I never went to the gym. I think maybe the last time I'd been in a gym was at university many years ago. And that space for me was not a space I particularly liked, especially the free weights. I never did free weights. I didn't do any weightlifting. It felt quite intimidating for me. I avoided cameras. I didn't like taking pictures. I didn't like being in pictures for some reason. I just felt uncomfortable. I was happy being in the background, happy to support, just didn't want to be seen in general. It's been there all my life. Somebody said to me once, and this is where the change started, there's no record of you being in those moments, those special moments that you'll look back at and smile because you remember what was happening. That was quite sad and quite tragic for me and made me think about starting to appear in pictures. With my Hyrox training, everything changed. I was getting up at 6 a.m. to start running so that I was more prepared for the classes on a Sunday. And I love my bed. I was not really a morning person. Happy to do things in the morning, but not getting up at 5:30 to be moving by 6. But I was doing that. I was going to class at 6 a.m. at F45. So I was out there scraping ice off my car at the crack of dawn, in the dark, in the cold, and thinking, oh my God, I don't recognize myself. Who would have thought I would be doing this? Basically, my midlife moment was totally surprising me and my family and those around me, because I was doing things I said I'd never do and nobody had seen me do before. And ultimately transpired with the training. My first class was the last weekend in March 2024. I decided to compete in my first Hyrox race 3 months later in June 2024. I stood on the start line exactly 3 months after I walked into my first class. That for me is one of the most satisfying, most exciting achievements I've ever had. I went from being a total novice, being weak, to strong enough to complete a race. I was nervous. I was doubtful. I honestly wasn't sure if I would finish the race, but I stepped up with a lot of help from amazing trainers and amazing community and support. And I raced my first race within 3 months. And I changed everything. I changed how I moved, how I trained. I was stepping into a midlife beyond my dreams. That was only the beginning. I was discovering strength I didn't know I had. I was discovering possibilities that I didn't know were available to me. I was discovering an adventure that was there for the taking all the time, but just never occurred to me, just was never visible to me. But yet it was always there. This all came through Hyrox training and moving differently. I was creating a new identity for myself that was beyond anything I could imagine. And it was totally new, which is why I'm here now, talking to you, sharing the amazing stories that you will hear of amazing women who are just like you and me, who have chosen to move differently, or just move as they love and as they see fit and as they want, owning it, sometimes easily, sometimes with difficulty, but they're owning it and they keep moving. So my story is not quite finished. I competed in my first race 3 months after starting training. And at that point, when I started seeing all the things I was achieving and doing I'd never done before, little things like eating nuts. I'd hated nuts all my life, started to eat and love nuts. Just found I had to be outside. I am not that person, but suddenly I was being drawn outside. And I was saying yes to things that I'd never considered before. So I then decided, right, what else can I do? I'm going to do the things that scare me. I'm going to say yes to things I'd never thought of. As I was scrolling through the group chat in F45 community, I saw a message about a documentary series that F45 were doing because they were sponsoring the Hyrox London event in December and looking for members to be filmed to follow their preparation for the race. I looked at it and I thought, this is really interesting, but my old me was like, hell no, we're not doing this. And for that reason, I thought, let me see what's involved, because I never wanted to be up front. But what would that mean? So I looked at the application, I completed the application. And I have to say, the questions that came up on the form really got me thinking about how far I'd come, who I was, what exercise meant to me. And I wanted to share it because my transformation was so drastic in so many ways. I wanted to share that and share what F45 had done for me. So I completed the application and then I got to the end and I had to submit a video sharing why I wanted to participate. And again, this was very much a theoretical exercise for me up until that point. And as I said, I don't like taking pictures. I certainly didn't do videos. I was like, right, I'm going to follow this through to the end because I've started, I'm going to finish it. And oh my gosh, recording that video, I think it was only a 2-minute video, was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And my daughter, Azana, was there coaching me, but also laughing at me, saying, Mum, that's cringe. Don't send that. Redo this. I finally uploaded the video. And days later, I got an email saying that I had been chosen. And I have to say, my heart sank. I think I swore, because this was not the plan. That very much was an exercise in getting out of my comfort zone. I didn't expect to be chosen. I didn't think I'd be chosen as an older woman when the people I know that were also applying were young, very fit, clearly more athletic than me. I just didn't think that my story would be of interest, but I was chosen. I actually didn't plan to accept it and do it. I remember my husband saying, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? You're not going to die. I was back and forth for a couple of days deciding. And my old self was like, oh, don't bother. You've done it. You submitted the form. Well done. And then I thought, well, no, the fact that they've offered this to me is something. And do I say no to it? Because saying no to it in a way was going back to my old self. And I felt I had progressed so much with who I was then. I didn't want it to stop. So I said yes. That in itself was another experience. The first day of filming was one of the most uncomfortable days I've ever felt. Having strangers in my house, which if you know me, I'm a very private person. Having strangers in my house with me constantly for hours, a whole day at a time sometimes, and filming everything. You know, I don't do cameras and I've got cameras in my face, watching everything, doing interviews. It was unreal. It was unpleasant, honestly, for me. But I got through the first day. And at the end of the first day, they filmed a section where we went for a walk in the park and they asked the kids what they thought about what I was doing. And what the kids said really touched my heart. And you realize I was on my journey and I'm thinking about how it may affect them, but I had designed my training and I was training in such a way I was trying to minimize any disruption for the family, hence early mornings and Sunday sessions so we could get on with our day. So hearing what they thought was magic, but I had overcome what for me was a nightmare. Being visible, being seen, putting myself out there, feeling really exposed. But this was the year about saying yes, about stepping out of my discomfort and choosing possibility, choosing adventure, because I didn't know where any of this was going to take me. And in a way, it was me deciding that I was done shrinking. I was done living the smaller version of myself, the smaller version of my life. I was done stepping back and being in the background. Because actually, what could happen if I step forward? As I got through that process, I learned a lot about myself. Some days of filming were easier than others. For the first few weeks, it felt like I was progressing 2 steps forward and then taking 2 steps back. Doing the interviews felt uncomfortable. What I learned was, as the episodes came out and people shared what they thought of the series, it was lovely to hear other women my age thinking about what else they could do, how they could move differently, not necessarily Hyrox, but just start moving. I remember one friend who had watched and participated in the series. She was a clear no, I'm not doing Hyrox, not interested. And she later agreed to do a Hyrox relay, which is one of my happiest moments. It was also about documenting, capturing and sharing my story from going from invisible and happily hiding to being visible and stepping forward and stepping out into my power, into what's possible. It was about representation and, in a way, legacy, because I hope that my children will see the change and they will see what's possible for them if only they say yes and they take a chance. It may not work, but there's nothing lost. And it's all about possibility. What can happen if we say yes and if we move and keep moving? It's all about, for me, being an example and showing other midlife women that we need to give ourselves permission to say yes and to shine, to fly and to do things differently, because we never know where it will take us. Participating in that series showed me that being visible isn't scary, especially when you understand that your story helps another woman see what's possible for her. Midlife is not a decline. It's an invitation if we choose. Adventure is something that doesn't go away or we age out of. Adventure is there if we say yes, if we try. We don't have to jump in with both feet. We can try creating little adventures to get us moving, to get us exploring, to see what's comfortable and uncomfortable. Movements, it's about finding what you like doing. It's about finding what kind of movement makes you come alive. Opens up your world, opens up your mind to what else you can do. It's about using movement to uncover and reveal who you really are and what is possible for you. Physically, mentally, spiritually, it's about reclaiming who you are. I was, in a way, reclaiming my old 20, 30-year-old self who was bold, who was brave, who believed in herself, who was quite happy to try things. A lot of that went over the years. And I had been shrinking. I was playing safe. I was being cautious. I was trying to stick to what I knew because I could control things. And where I relinquished control in training, in competing, in traveling as I competed, I learned a lot about myself and hope you can learn about yourself. This is why this podcast, Unshrinkable Midlife Moves, exists. Because if you can't see it, you can't be it. And maybe you won't believe it until you see it. That's why I am shining the spotlight on amazing women who are moving powerfully, courageously, boldly, with possibility. I want you to see what's possible. So I'll leave you with this. Where are you shrinking? Where have you been playing it safe? What could happen if you said yes to moving differently, to one small thing in your life today? Midlife isn't a time to disappear. It's not a time to fade to the background. It's not about how we look. It's about how we feel. That's what I've learned through my time training. I feel so much stronger. I feel so much fitter. My mind is different. I feel different. And it's given me a glow up that I want everybody else to feel and experience. I am not fading. I am not going to age quietly or cautiously. I am stepping and have stepped into my best life and will continue to, and I want you to do the same. So in the next episodes, I will be speaking with amazing women who have been on their own journeys, who are so special in their own ways that I would like you to see what's possible for you. You may already be training, you may already be moving, or you've been doing the same thing for many years. You may have been an accomplished athlete with many achievements, many titles, yet there is still possibility. There's still more if you so wish. You might be somebody who has been thinking about getting moving, but it's felt too much. It's felt too intimidating. You don't know where to start. Or you've started and you've fallen off the wagon and you're just not quite ready or not sure how to get back on it. This podcast is for you. It's about showing you what's possible, providing you with insights, advice, stories, real stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly, information that hopefully will help you move differently, move powerfully, shine and fly in your midlife as you deserve. Keep moving and keep shining.